I get to understand why I do what I do a little bit better. And I get to take on those things that I don't really think I should be doing to my best of my ability. I assess my strengths, I assess my weaknesses when I try to understand why in fact this thing of fasting is something that can perhaps lend me to being someone who has a certain air of consciousness in his life, that I can have that thing of taqwa that is something that I should aspire to have within my life. It comes from the fact that I can actually perceive myself in my most base form. Nothing else is compelling me, nothing else is motivating me other than myself. My desires, my whims, my satisfactions, everything and anything that I do, it comes from me. And so then I get to decide, do I want to take myself on, or am I just going to let myself be whoever it is that I am when the month starts and I walk out of the month in the same exact way? We have to come to this understanding that we can utilize this time to progress individually. And so when we are trying to take on those habits, we have to understand a little bit about ourselves and what we can be inclined towards doing. When we do something, it's not just that we have done it. But if we want to really understand why we are doing what we are doing, not only do we look at the action when we are actually undertaking it, but we look at that which takes place before we do the action itself, and then what takes place afterwards. What was the situation, what was the scenario that surfaced that actively allowed for me to exert that emotional response? Where did I find myself? Who was I interacting with? What was the atmosphere that I was placed in that put me in such a predicament that I did that thing that I didn't want to do? And then after I begin to understand what in fact I was, where I was and what was around me, then I can assess the deed itself. What did I do that was problematic? What did I do that just comes habitually? What did I do that just comes mechanically, that just comes instinctively? And then I ask myself, what did I get out of it? More often than not, when we are doing something that in retrospect we wish we hadn't done, we do it because we want to be satisfied at that moment. That we chase after that complacency rather than running towards contentment. And when we are looking at that thing, we have to see, what are we actively gaining from acting in that way? If I find myself in a situation where a good friend of mine, my brother, my sister comes and we get into a place where I am tired from my day's work, I am tired and I've dealt with all kinds of people abusing me all day, and now this person comes and tests my patience, I'm going to let loose on them in ways that I can't even imagine. What do I get from this? The benefit that I personally derive, the payback, the payoff that I get from acting upon that habit is that I feel a little bit good about myself. That I get to let loose, I get to have that temporary satisfaction, I get to feel a little bit better by letting you feel a little bit worse. And that is the trade-off. That in pursuit of letting myself feel good, I have had to make you feel a little bit worse. That in pursuit of me sleeping a little bit more when it's time for me to get out of my bed to pray the Fajr prayer, what am I letting loose? I'm letting loose, I'm letting go of the fact that the performance of that prayer is an infinite times better than anything that I could imagine. That everything that I act upon when I decide to take it for its most temporary of satisfactions, indeed I will be temporarily satisfied. But it comes at the sacrifice of letting go of something else. And so I have to consciously start to understand that when I act upon those habits, when I act upon those instincts, maybe I'm getting something in the immediate, but what kind of framework is it leaving for me to work in beyond that moment? That is said that there was a young boy who consistently would get angry. And this young boy, he had a father who cared about him very much. And whenever he would see his young child engaging in these moments of rage, it would hurt him and affect him in such a way that he knew he had to do something for this child. And so he takes his son and he says to him, my son, that whenever you have these moments of anger, whenever you respond to these situations with that mechanical rage, I want you to do this for me. That rather than venting your anger, rather than letting it go into our yard and there is a fence that is there. I want you to take a nail and hammer it into the fence. And then I want you to, when a day passes by, when you get angry at no one, remove one nail from that fence. And the young boy, he begins to act upon it, doing what his father tells him to do. There's days when he puts nails in abundance. There are days that come intermittently when he doesn't put anything at all, and to his pleasure he gets to take one out, until the day comes when there is nothing left in that fence at all. And so he says to his father, look at me, look at what I have achieved. And the father says, my son, indeed you have achieved something great today. But take a closer look at that fence. That even though you have pulled out each and every nail from it, the holes are still left therein from when you hammered them in initially. And so you can go to an extent where you overcome something. You can go to a place where you try to actively overcome a flaw or a habit. But it still has an effect on someone whenever we decide to act upon something, because it is pleasing to us as opposed to what would be mutually benefit to all of those around us. And those habits, we have to begin to start taking them on. And so when we begin to take them on, when we try to take on our instinctive actions, we have to begin to also understand what it will do to us individually if in fact we begin to battle them. If you actively leave behind something, if you actively stop doing something, you now have to find a way to replace that thing. That I'm not going to watch the television anymore. It creates a void in your life. It creates a certain void in your day. You have to think of something to replace it with. Because in that hour now, in those 5 hours now, where you were doing something that you were leaving behind, is going to be something that you're going to have to fill up with something else. I can't just say that from now on I'm not going to do this anymore and then not have a plan of action as to how I'm going to be dealing with the opportunities that are now in my hand. And so I have to think of something that I can do to replace it with. And this is where I begin to act upon habits that are better for me. This is where I use the month of Ramadan to begin to establish deeds that are consistent, that benefit me. And what do I do in that frame of mind? First and foremost, I have to do those things that are going to derive benefit that I enjoy actively doing. If I try to undertake a deed, if I try to commit to a certain action that causes me all kinds of pain and detriment, that I can't really handle it, then it's not going to last in my life. If I as an individual say that it is my goal in this month of Ramadan to commit to reading the Quran, and I try day in and day out to read the entire Mus'haf from page 1 to page last, every single day, after having not touched the book for the first 10 years of my life, the first 20 years of my life, is it going to really be something that I can do? So it has to make sense for me. I have to understand for me how I can progress, how I can develop, how I can implement. And then I have to be able to assess that. And the ways that I do it is that I try to do different things. I don't pigeonhole myself to say that I will commit to this one deed and this one action, but I understand that I as a human being have the ability to be strong in one aspect and to be weak in one aspect, and I have to be able to understand that this month of Ramadan puts me in a place where I am now not only acting as I would before and after the month's beginning and end, but I'm acting in a way where I'm trying to understand my full potential, my full ability to perform, what my utmost limits are for my strengths and what my boundaries are for my weaknesses. This month shows me how far I can actually go. And so I use it to test and try what are things that I can do with a certain facility and what are things that I have to do that might cause me a little bit more effort. And when I think about it, I have to think about it strategically. That when the month starts, I can't say to myself that I, who have not been doing things in abundance, am now going to start the day by going to pray at the masjid, that I'm going to go and spend my next hour going out to feed the homeless, and then the hour after that I'm going to go to the hospital, and then I'm going to spend 2 hours